Hey, everybody, it's Mahadeva, the OG Thunder Wizard. All right, so I have a short amount of time today, and for the life of me, I couldn't come up with a topic. So until people arrive and start asking questions, I'm just going to talk about whatever comes to mind. But what was bugging me, somebody left a comment, and without getting into the specifics of it, uh, it bothers me. This I really want to help. As much of a hard ass as I can be, I really do want to help. I want to help the world. I care a lot about this planet, and I care a lot about the ecology of the planet. And there's a real, a real problem coming in terms of climate change. It's a real thing. What I'm seeing is that as I've said in previous videos. Sorry, I'm looking for one of my links here. That's why I'm a typical guy. I can't do two things at once. But as I've said in previous live streams, I think we're headed for a dark ages. So you know what happened in the Middle Ages, right? How the Middle Ages came about is that there was the classical world. You had Greeks, and then you had Alexander the Great. And we're talking just in the Western world now. And then you had the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was the biggest empire of that up until that time. And they had a lot of amazing advancements that we've lost. They had a lot of scientific advancements that were lost. Of course, the Roman Empire started out as a way to sorry, I'm trying to find the Mao Shan link here. So I'm just going to look for that, and then I'll keep talking. Where are we? There it is. All right. So the Roman Empire had a lot of things, a lot of technology that we've lost. Their knowledge of aqueducts, their knowledge of of building and architecture and mathematics. A lot of that stuff was lost. And towards the end of the Roman Empire, they were also coming to some very advanced conclusions about the nature of the Earth and of the stars and the planets. And it was well known that the Earth was round. They knew that. That wasn't something new. They knew that the world was round. They had been able to figure it out mathematically from observations, things they couldn't possibly have known, which now we can, because we can actually fly out of the atmosphere and look at the Earth, as well as a bunch of other things. But that's just one example. And then in came Christianity. So Christianity was, first off, it did two things. I mean, it was responding to two things that were going on in society. The first one is, because the Roman Empire was an empire, empires thrive on slavery and on free labor and controlling the masses. We in the West have looked at communism, and we have pointed at communism and said, look at that, nobody has any rights, everybody has to be part of the system. And it's true. I knew a guy who had spent some time this was a long time ago, had spent some time in East Germany, and I was alive when East Germany fell and became part of, then it was all part of Germany. And what he was saying is that the Germans that were in East Germany, during the unification of Germany, that they couldn't wipe their own ass. If they grew up in the communist system, they were told what to do, where to go. They weren't allowed to have, do anything. And he was just talking about there's just the inability for them to have any ability to just do whatever, just to know what to do. Somebody had to tell them what to do. And this is how empires run. They run on people not having an identity, not having a sense of self, and being led around by the nose. I look at, the styles that kids are doing these days. I'm that old now that I get to talk like that. But one of them is women having these rings in their septum. And every time I see that, I think of an ox. Because that's how you pull an oxalon. Oxes are really strong. So it's hard they're stubborn, and it's hard to get them to move. The easiest way to get them to move is to put a ring in their nose, and then just a little bit of pulling on the nose will pull them forward because it's so painful. So every time I see a hot-looking young woman with dreadlocks, with a big, ring in her nose, I think, she wants to be led around by the nose. Yeah, I'm just an old man talking. That's just what we do. But that's how empires are run. So the first thing you have to do is you have to get rid of access to knowledge. You have to get rid of access to knowledge, which includes education. You have to control the education system. Because if people start knowing, if you have enough knowledge, then you can not only determine your own life, but you can tell truth from fiction. And so it's hard to control people if they are able to know truth from fiction. So the elites were the ones that had access to education. And that's always kind of been the case. The elites have access to education because if you have education, you can do things. You can do things on a large scale. And so you had a lot of people, many people who had been conquered, who were third and fourth generation of conquered people. And they had been enslaved, or they were in the lower class. They didn't have a lot of, they weren't elites. They were the poor. And the poor are the people that you put in the armies. You make them, you put them in all the menial jobs. And you don't give them a lot of opportunities, because if you do, then you can't control them. And if you don't have a big mass of people to control, it's hard to run an empire. So that created a feeling of victim mentality. This is where Christianity came from. Christianity first came from Gnosticism. Gnosticism wasn't Christian. It was, different things. There was Jewish Gnosticism, and then there was pagan Gnosticism, and then they all centered around this idea of the Messiah, the Savior. And who needs a Savior? Victims. Victims need a Savior. And so this became a problem for the Roman Empire. The secret religions, the secret sacred religions and the secret societies, these became a problem because it's hard to control people who are seeking to get their own mindset. And so Gnosticism and Messianic Jewish Gnosticism, which turned into Christianity, started rising. And so what the Romans did, which was genius, was they co-opted it. Instead of fighting it, because especially the Jewish rebellion was a real problem for them. It was this tiny little country, but you had these people who, their religion was based on a victim mentality. The whole idea of being taken captive in Egypt, which never happened, and Moses having to lead them out of Israel, and the one God, and the the xenophobia that they had, which, the Jewish religion is a xenophobic religion. Xenophobic means fear of the strange, fear of the different. So they were afraid of anybody that wasn't them, racially, culturally, religiously. They were the chosen people. It's a xenophobic religion. So it's very hard to control people who have that kind of xenophobic, exclusive religion, because you had to believe in that one God. Whereas, in the rest of the world, in the Roman Empire, everybody had their own local gods and you could worship however you wanted. And the Romans were tolerant of people's religion. As long as you didn't rebel, you could worship whatever you wanted. They didn't care. In fact, they'll incorporate it. And that worked really well, to incorporate people. But then you had this xenophobic victim mentality religion that was incredibly unifying, and it was very hard to work against. So they couldn't quell that Jewish rebellion. It was just too much of a problem. So what they did is they co-opted the militaristic savior religion, the messianic religion, because originally Jesus, or the Messiah, was not this bringer of peace. He was a bringer of war. He was supposed to bring war and get rid of the oppressors. So this is very dangerous. It's hard to run an empire when you got this going on. So instead of trying to wipe them out, which they did end up doing, but along the lines, they also co-opted the religion because other people were buying into this idea of needing a savior and all that. So they turned it into eventually turned it into the state religion. And then used the xenophobia and the exclusivity as a way to justify further conquest and domination of other people. So much so that, the strict, life and death aspects of the Old Testament, of you either follow the commandments or you're worthy of death, we'll stone you to death for thinking differently, saying differently, we'll kill you just for not having the right attitude. That became a national, the empirical law. And so you had Roman legions that were led by priests, Catholic priests, that would go into places, try to forcibly convert people. And if not, they'd put a sword to your neck and they'd kill you. And that's how they used religion as the excuse. We're bringing the light of God to all of these barbarians. So that creates a victim mentality. And in that victim mentality, what ends up happening is that the destruction of knowledge. So the scientific knowledge of that time was that people were starting to realize that the earth was round. Things that we, in modern day science, we take for granted. And, many other things. But this was a threat to the ability to control people, because if you're not the center of the universe, if you don't have this victim mentality where you are simultaneously the center of the universe and the victim of everything, it's hard to control people. So they started wiping out, they destroyed whole libraries of knowledge that are gone today, that we don't know. There was knowledge and there was technology that they had that's gone. And it's because the victim mentality of of what was happening in the people themselves. It was a rebellion. So the victim mentality, the exclusivity was a rebellion against authority. It started out that way. Even though it was extremely toxic, destroying of knowledge, killing people, all kinds of really, really destructive things. It was coming from the desire of the masses to overthrow the oppression of the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire, as I said, very wisely, in their, for them, co-opted this victim mentality and made it the eventually made it the government position on everything. And then used that xenophobia and control to destroy people's ability to get knowledge, to get self-awareness. And I'm telling you this story because I'm seeing this happen today. And it really, really upsets me. It really bothers me. And as you know, I give you the blanket statement to drop all of the victim mentality, to drop all of the conspiracy theories because of this reason. Because what's happened is that there's two things going on. There are those who are trying to stimulate the masses to operate from fear. There are people in real positions of power who have real money and real power, and they want to be able to control society. And the way to do that is to keep them victimized. Now, the genius of it is, first, what happened in the 60s, the counterculture. When I was a kid, hippies would say, don't trust anybody over 30. And that was just basically, don't trust anybody, in the older generation, which was just, and the truth is that there was huge things that happened, like in terms of music. There has never been a revolution in music, anything coming close to what happened in the 60s and 70s. When first rock and roll came out, but when bands like Black Sabbath came out, that was such an incredible revolution. There had never been anything that sounded anything like that. And it really was shocking to the older generation. It was music that they truly couldn't get their minds around, and it was shocking and it was powerful, and it was a huge departure. There hasn't been anything even close to that. Music today is pretty much the same. I mean, rap music, but in terms of the shift of music going from, even 50s rock and roll, from 50s rock and roll to 70s acid rock was just absolutely mind-bogglingly huge. We haven't had anything even come close to it. So unless you lived through it, you can't know what a amazingly powerful transition and revolution it was. And looking back on it, I believed that racism was going to be over. That we were, they were a little before my time. Hippies were a little bit before my time, but as I was growing up, I was kind of a hippie. But I really thought racism was over. There wasn't going to be any racism anymore. Sexism, the kind of stuff that's going on now. I never really expected that fundamentalist Christianity would actually come back stronger than ever. That racism would come back stronger than ever. Xenophobia, the fear of the different. I really thought that was going to be over. So it's shocking to see that worse than it was in the 50s and 60s in some ways. But what is genius about the people now who are running the world, and I'm not going to say who it is, because the moment I start saying who it is, those of you think, you're nodding your head. The majority of you are nodding your head that you think that I'm talking about the same people you are, and I'm not. So I'm not going to say who I'm talking about, because if I do, I'm going to lose you, because you've been hypnotized. And what has happened is that your desire to rebel against authority is an accurate one. Your desire to rebel against the elites is an accurate one. Your desire to rebel against those who control information is an accurate one. Except that, just like what the Romans did, the Romans co-opted the victim mentality and the revolutionary mentality of the Gnostics. Because Gnosticism was a violent, militaristic revolution. It wasn't about peace. So what the Romans did is they co-opted it. They emasculated the general who was the Messiah and turned him into a pacifist who paid his taxes, which was the opposite. The whole reason that that unified the Jewish rebellion and the Jewish messianic movement was do not pay taxes to a blasphemous polytheist government. That's what brought them all together, was we don't pay taxes to somebody who claims to be a god, because that's blasphemy. So what they do, they turn Jesus into a pacifist who paid his taxes. The most famous thing is give unto God what is God and give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Meaning, go to church and worship God, but then pay your taxes to Caesar, because that's what God wants you to do. Be a good citizen. They co-opted it and used it. And 99% of you listening to me who think that you are rebelling against the system, your desire is an accurate one. But you have been lied to. You have been manipulated. The people who own you have told you, and they feed into an alternate stream of information, absolute lies, to build up the fear within you, so that you will no longer be a part of free society, which promotes knowledge, promotes education. Being able to get an education was part of, the American Revolution. Now, I'm not here to say that the American Revolution was perfect, because it wasn't. That revolution was really about white landowning Christian men who wanted to hold on to their money. They didn't want to pay taxes. And there was an insane king, and the government of England, of the British Empire, they were actually moving towards democracy as well. But they had this insane guy, and they had some really selfish elites that wanted to milk the colonies for as much as they could. If that hadn't happened, we would still be part of the Commonwealth. The United States would still be part of the British Commonwealth, because it would have been in their financial interest to stay there. But that rebellion against what they called tyranny, part of that was a rebellion to bring education to everybody. And that's why in the United States, for such a long period of time, now it's not cool. Now it's cool not to be educated. But knowledge is freedom. The ability to find out the truth is freedom. But if you don't want people to have the ability to create their own reality, then the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start attacking education. This is what happened with the communists. One of the first things, and it happens in every communist revolution, the first thing that they do is they kill or imprison the intelligentsia, the educated people, the poets, the writers, the scientists, the philosophers. These are the first people that are killed or put into prison, and they're labeled as enemies of the state. And remember, the state, if you're a communist, before it was the state, it was you were rebelling against tyranny. So let's be clear about that. Communism started as a rebellion against tyranny. It was fed to people as freedom, equality. Then once those people got into power, they then did they took what the tyrants were doing and, magnified it even more. And the first thing you do is you get rid of the educated and you get rid of avenues of education, which is exactly what happened when Christianity came in. They used religion to burn entire libraries full of knowledge that would have absolutely opened up levels of awareness in society in all different ways. And what happened? We went into the Dark Ages. And the Dark Ages was ruled by tyrants who killed people if you had the wrong belief. They'd skin you alive. Even if you had the right belief, you would be skinned alive for reading it in the native language. So there was whole populations of people who were Christians who went to church who weren't allowed to read the Bible. They weren't even allowed to read the text that tells you what the religion is, because then you might see it for what it is. You might have your own opinions, and you can't control people who have their own opinions. But the one thing that drives all of it is fear. The fear that somebody more powerful than you is going to do it to you. This has driven every single decline in civilization. And when you have a population that cannot determine the truth, then you can control them. Because all you have to do is stimulate their fear. I'm not gonna quote it, but there was a comment that came on the channel based on something like I made the mistake of being specific and talking about specific political things, which I'm trying to avoid doing. And somebody jumped on it and promoted outright misinformation and very dangerous lies. And it just got me thinking. It's at times like that, I throw my hands up in the air and I say, what am I doing? Why am I even bothering? Why do I even bother? But it really is extremely important that people be educated. If you believe that that there are things happening in science that are trying to destroy your way of life, become a scientist. Actually go to school and learn. You're a flat earther. Go to school and learn astronomy, the science of it. It's not a sign of bravery or intelligence to simply discount things because somebody else, you don't like the fact that somebody else is telling you something you don't want to believe. And that's what it all comes down to. You don't like what somebody's telling you. And it's because they are in a position of authority. And you don't want anybody in a position of authority telling you anything. And so your knee-jerk response is to rebel. And this is where you get manipulated, because anybody who comes along who tells you what you want to hear, which is they can't tell you what the truth is. That's really all you want to hear. Nobody can tell you what the truth is. I have a feeling. Nobody can talk you out of your feeling. As long as it stimulates that within you, the fear that somebody's going to tell you something and you don't have the ability to figure out whether it's true or not, then you will be manipulated. What is the main thing that is being said in the United States right now? I don't know who to believe. They say it about COVID pandemic. They say it about the vaccine. They say it about the election. They say, I don't know who to believe. And so the people who say, I don't know who to believe, you can pretty much guess what they're going to do. They're going to do what they believe is the safest thing to do. So if you feel that you are being minimized, if you feel you're being controlled, if you feel that you're being lied to, and if you feel you don't have the ability to objectively understand the truth, and you don't know who to believe, then your first reaction is going to believe anybody who stimulates that feeling of fear inside of you. There's a payoff in fear because this is the whole woke. I'm woke. Because look at what they're doing. Then people think they're woke because they're able to say, people are lying to me. I don't trust them. You know, like when I was a kid, don't trust anybody over the age of 30. That feeling makes you safe. Because at least, you know, you're going to err on the side of caution. Because if you just accept what these other more educated people tell you, and you don't trust anybody in authority, and they tell you something, you feel safer by rebelling. Or if somebody says, they're lying to you. Here, literally people have said to me, and I'm not kidding, they've said, my friend told me. And that's their whole justification for arguing with me about something. My friend told me that blue-haired people live in your armpit. That's it. That's all that. And that feeling of camaraderie with other people who are afraid, other people who feel victimized. And then you create this religion like Christianity, which then gets taken over by the people who actually do have authority, who do have power, and do know the truth. And they are more than happy to keep you in your ignorance. And if they can team up with you and say, yeah, that's right, those intelligentsias, those philosophers, those university professors, those scientists, they're lying to us. That's right. Let's get rid of them. Let's string them up. Let's put them in prison. In fact, let's just worship Q. It's Christianity all over again. They're going to worship Q. And they'll believe anything they're told as long as it stimulates that fear within them. And sadly, I wish I could use this platform. I wish I could use this platform to debunk all of the nonsense that's out there. But for some reason, I don't understand. The majority of people who come to my channel are the people who are in that. So I'm going to have to attack your fear-based things through other means. All of these things. It's not my job to have a politics-oriented show. Because it doesn't serve me, it doesn't serve the channel. But I'm here to tell you that your ignorance and your fear literally has the ability to completely destroy society. And potentially destroy the world. You know, if what they say about climate change is true. Your fear of people in authority, your fear of people with power, your fear of people with money can completely destroy society. And the sad part for me is there's not a whole lot I can do about it. I wish there was, but there isn't. In any case, as I said, I've got a short window of time. I didn't know what I was going to talk about today. I am not going to get specific about politics. I'm going to do everything in my power in the future to never talk about politics again because I don't have the ability to change people. I don't have the ability to educate people. I am admitting defeat when it comes to battling over and conquering your fear mentality. I can't do it. I don't have the power, so I'm going to give up. What I do have the ability to do is teach you about esoteric spiritual practices which can give you the ability to break through your limited fear-based mentality, your pain. I do have that ability, so that's what I'm going to focus on. And anybody who comes along and starts, if you start spewing this stuff, I'm going to cancel you. I'm going to block you. For my own sanity. I can't, it drives me crazy. What I want to do is I really want to sit you down and help you escape from the bondage of your fear. I really want, everything in me wants to liberate you. But there are just some things I'm not supposed to do. It's just not my job. So I'm not going to do it. Anyway, I'm going to answer any questions you have, no matter how stupid, for the next 45 minutes or whatever. And then we'll see what happens after that. All right, so let me see what we've got in terms of questions here. So, I have no patience for any bullshit today. So if you've got a question, I'll answer it. But if you're going to drop some fear-based conspiracy, I'm just going to block you. I'm just telling you now. I just don't have it in me. I'm not going to argue with you because I can't change your mind. I don't have the ability to do it. I'll just block you. Let's see. All right, so Zach, that's not a question. Do you want to ask me about aliens? I'll answer any question, no matter how stupid. Doc Manhattan's intern. Let's go. I'm wanting to know where you came up with that name, first off. Did you come up with that because I showed Dr. Manhattan? Or were you a Dr. Manhattan's intern before you came onto my channel? I'm interested to know that. So let's go with a stupid question. Is it possible to develop legit supernatural powers by doing Qigong cultivations? Yes. How did you not hear that? Yes. I mean, that's how I got into it. So I wanted martial superpowers, and I got them. I was able literally to defeat I would have walked in the ring with Mike Tyson without blinking an eye, and I would have torn him to shreds. And I had all kinds of other crazy powers. So the answer is yes. That's what all this is about. That's what the Mao Shan is. You want that ability? Do that. Study that and do it for years. Yeah, you're going to have to learn how to overcome a lot of things, and you're going to have to learn how to do things you don't understand. But if you can grasp some of those really challenging concepts and physicalize them, then yes, you can have all kinds of superpowers. Dakota Spruill, that's not a question. You're in a lot of pain. Well, so two things, Dakota. Do the practices, and you're going to need some counseling. You can't do it alone. Look, if you guys want what I have, you got to do what I do. I don't know how else to do it. I have a therapist. I have a couple of different places that I go where I'm with groups of people. And I get help and I get counseling from outside sources. I've had teachers, mentors. You can't do it alone. The majority of people do this alone, and at best they stay static and neutral, and at worst, life gets worse. So do the practices and get some counseling. Whether you find somebody like me that you can go to and get, whether they're a mentor or a life coach, or find somebody that you trust, somebody that has something that you want. This is the basis of every teacher you go to. It should be somebody that has something that you want, and then you listen, because if they're doing something that you can't do, you have to empty your cup and ask them how they did it, and you have to take their direction. So it's not going to be easy, Dakota. If you're in pain and you're obviously not able to fix yourself, it's going to be challenging to give yourself over to somebody else, because they're going to probably push your comfort level. A good teacher is going to push your comfort level. It means it's going to be embarrassing, or it's going to be painful, or it's going to be frightening, or something like that. But a good teacher does that. So you're probably going to need some help. And again, if you guys have a question, what do I keep asking you to do? Please write the word in all caps so I can see it. If I don't see it, I can't answer your question. James Peck, question, lowercase. Followed you 5 years now. So you've been following me for 5 years and you haven't heard me say that I want question in all caps? I followed you 5 years now. You're a star. I've heard the emerald tabs got messed about with, but I don't know what the emerald tabs are. So I said I'll answer any questions, but I have to at least know. I don't know what the hell they are. The emerald tablets, I don't know what the hell they are. They were messed about with by Dorial. Who is that? In his vision from the Great White Lodge. Okay, the other thing that's bugging me is that your spelling is just atrocious. So I really believe strongly in education. I really believe strongly in being able to know the difference between your and your. You know, T-H-E-I-R and T-H-E-R-E. You know, your, Y-O-U-R and Y-O-U''R-E. It's really important that people know how to do that. You know, there's that thing called Grammarly. I keep seeing it come up on, you know, YouTube, and it basically does the work for you. And, you know, they're presenting it as some really beneficial thing. It's not. It's dumbing people down so that they don't have to figure out how to type. I hate spell check. And people who know how to spell will use the excuse, oh yeah, fucking spell check. Well, so then go back and fix it. It's important. Being able to speak and write efficiently is important. You know, having somebody else do it for you. So it's bothering me, James, that that your punctuation and your spelling is so horrific. It shows me the two things. What are the two things that are most important to me? Pay attention and put effort. You're doing neither of those things. And I'm saying that obviously I don't have an agenda. You know, I'm not about, you know, your opinion, because you're saying nice things to me. I appreciate that. But it still is driving me crazy that you won't give me, this is how it comes across to me, that you won't give me the respect by putting the effort into to having correct spelling so that I can understand what you're writing. That's what it's all about. I want to be able to understand what you're writing and not have to guess. Anyway, could I shed any light about the emerald tablets being messed about? No, because I don't have the first clue what the emerald tablets are. So I'm not going to castigate you, because I said you can ask any question, no matter how stupid. But unfortunately, I don't know anything about it, so I can't answer that question. Brian Yoshi, please write the word question so I can answer it. You didn't write that, so I didn't know it was a question. I had to read the whole thing. In meditation, I connect to the energy and it unwinds everything in me on its own. Well, that sounds pretty good. I'm noticing that there is a blockage in my third eye. Will it eventually blast open? First off, how do you know you have a blockage in your third eye? How do you know what it's like to have an open third eye? I don't believe you have a blockage in your third eye. There's all kinds of assumptions there. One of the assumptions is that you know what the third eye is supposed to do. I'm assuming you think that if your third eye is open, you'll visually be able to see things. That's not necessarily what the third eye does. So I don't believe that you know what the third eye is meant to do. And, why do you need it blasted open? Why do you need such violence? That's another assumption. Why do you need this explosion on your forehead for your third eye to open? I don't think that anything blasts open. That's not my experience at all. I mean, I shouldn't say that, because I've had experiences where some meridians have blasted open, but that's not something you want. And the last thing is your assumption that having an open third eye means something. It tells me that you don't feel that you can see the truth. And you think if your third eye is open, you'll see the truth. So that tells me that you feel, again, constricted. Perhaps there's some fear. I don't know. I want to make sure they're not doing it to me. May not be you, but a lot of people have said, if I open my third eye, I'll be able to see people's energy and I'll be able to see people's motives, which means that you feel insecure. You feel that people are going to do it to you again. And opening up your third eye doesn't do anything in that regard. Having an open third eye doesn't mean you're going to be able to protect yourself or even that you know what the truth is. So I don't recommend you trying to blast open your third eye. What you should be, well, I mean, you can go do whatever you want, but for me, what I found is the best thing to do is to be comfortable and happy. That's it. There's nothing beyond the feeling of being fulfilled. There is nothing beyond that. I know because I've seen people gain huge amounts of spiritual power, and they were not psychologically happy people, and their power destroyed them. I myself, somebody asked, well, I get superpowers if I do Qigong. I'm like, yeah, that's why I did it. I had superpowers. I don't even know if I have them anymore or not. I'm not practicing that way. But it didn't make me happy. The control that I had, it gave me a feeling of control, and it gave me a feeling of protection. But it didn't make me happy. So, a lot of people go after spirituality not because they really want spirituality, but because they want power. They want power because they feel insecure, they feel small, they feel vulnerable. And the ironic thing is, in order to gain true power, you have to be completely vulnerable. It's the most vulnerable feeling. If I were to use my powers, especially my martial powers, I would have to go to a place of complete, total vulnerability, which is it takes a complete shift in your understanding. And most people that I trained with couldn't get the power for that reason. They couldn't go to the place of vulnerability. So that's something to ask yourself. Are you wanting your third eye open because it'll give you some power? Are you wanting spirituality? Are you wanting spiritual powers because you'll have some power over other people? If so, then it's a dead-end street and you're going to be miserable. It's not going to give you what you want. But everybody has to learn that on their own. And the truth is that once you've gotten that power, you can then, if you have the emotional maturity, and if you have the emotional maturity, you can then learn from that to become more spiritual, which will connect you more to that which will give you peace and fulfillment. It's just, there's a bunch of different paths to the same place. And eventually everybody who's gotten their powers, they're going to have to drop their powers to get in the door. It's like a dog with a big giant stick, and the dog wants to come in the door, but the doorway blocks them. And no matter how many times the dog comes at the door, the stick is going to keep him. And he doesn't have the ability to learn how to turn his head and go sideways. And that's what happens with people who gain spiritual power. The doorway to get to happiness gets smaller and smaller, and they can't get in. They're too big. And they're unwilling to let go of their power because they're afraid of being vulnerable. And then that power starts to eat them up. Literally, physically eat them up. All that stuff in Star Wars, about the Sith Lords, and by the end, he's just this corpse. He has all this power, but he's just this rotting corpse. That's really an accurate understanding of it. Dakota says, all right, so I'm not gonna repeat that. That's your opinion, and I understand and relate to some of it, but it's not moving the conversation forward for me. What happened to your teacups with sacred vey on them? I have no idea what you're talking about. I rent different homes, so the only cup that I own is this one, because it came from my fiance who passed away. And it's she gave this to me for my birthday, and that was literally the happiest moment in my life so far. So this is the only teacup that I own. Everything else comes from wherever I live, because I just rent furnished places. So I don't know. All right, that's not a question. Koya Moon, take away, the elite are our friends. Is that what I said? Is that what I said? I don't think that's what I said. I don't appreciate twisting my words like that. I did not say that the elite are our friends. Brian Smith, questions. Questions, more than one? Is my aura sensible? I have no idea what that means. Sensible in English means smart. Like somebody who is sensible, they're being sensible about this, meaning they're balanced in their approach. You're asking me, is your aura balanced in its approach? So I don't know what you mean by that. I'm a Leo, no biggie. But I've been toned to your wisdom for quite some time. I don't tone to my wisdom? I don't know what that means. Well, thank you. You're giving me a compliment. I appreciate that. Again, the punctuation and the spelling, I'm having a hard time with it. I wish that your punctuation and spelling were a little better. But I appreciate the sentiment. You're giving me a compliment, and I thank you for that. DC Pagan, question, not in all caps. I've been getting headaches from celestial Qigong exercises. Your grounding exercises helped after about 15 minutes of grounding. Are such headaches normal, or do they hint at something? It means that you have unconscious conflict. Because celestial Qigong will not give you a headache. Celestial Qigong, in fact, will relieve that. So the headache means that you have unconscious conflict. And again, all unconscious conflict comes from basically the same place, which is your soul wants to do one thing, and your programming, which is based on survival, meeting other people's needs, getting other people's approval, whether real or imagined, is telling you to do something else. So what's happening is that your self-hypnosis is breaking down. So this is good, if you can continue through it and get honest. Again, it's good to have a teacher. You guys come on here, you can see what I do most of the time is I challenge your tiny thinking, the mistakes. That's what I spend most of my time doing, revealing to you your unresolved, your fears, because I can see it. I can see myself in you. I can see things I've gone through in your questions. I mean, a lot of the time I know what your motivation is, what your unconscious agenda is when you ask a question, which is why some people must think I'm such a complete asshole, because I just blast at you, I just pants you in front of the whole world. But I only have a limited amount of time, and I'm trying to help you as best I can and teach others. So I'm not going to say they're normal, but it's not uncommon. Because some people have a lot of unresolved conflict in their unconscious. So I think keep doing the practices and have some mentor. Again, everybody in times past, you had to have a teacher. I'm technically not your teacher because I'm not there physically with you. I'm a talking head. And normally you don't give out these technologies without training somebody, which means they are entrusting themselves to you, and you are going to, reveal to them, what's faulty in their thinking, which might be embarrassing. People today, especially if you're on the internet, you're so protected, you're so well defended by the anonymity that it's not the same. And you have a lot more ability to discard what I say, or what I point out, unless you're my student. So DC Pagan, it would be helpful for you if you actually had a teacher, so who can get in there and ask the right questions. If you were my student, I would be asking questions about your life. I would know about your life. I would be able to immediately go, oh, that's because of your fear of mommy's disapproval. That's why you're doing that job. That's why you're married to that girlfriend, or you're dating that abusive girlfriend, because that's your mom. I don't have that information about you, so I can't tell you why you have a headache. I just can tell you that it's clear that there's some unconscious conflict. And the celestial qigong, the Maoshan stuff is so intense, and people who are doing the 90-day practices can tell you, it's bringing up all of their unresolved emotional stuff to the surface. So if you're doing it just because you want to feel good, you're not always going to feel good. Sometimes you're not going to feel good at all. You're going to be frightened and hurt and angry and all kinds of other things. But objectively, your life will get better. You'll become more prosperous. Your body will become healthier. But emotionally, you might have some issues. And one of the first signs that you're in conflict is a headache. Migraines, by the way, are rage. Migraines are when somebody is unconsciously full of rage. And the rage is so intense that the brain creates this headache that incapacitates you. Anyway, let's keep going. Olaf Wolfstone, question: how does a person get free of the fear of the Christian hell? Again, Olaf, welcome to the channel. As I always say, when did I say you were supposed to get rid of your fear? I never told you that. I never tell you to get rid of a feeling, to get over a feeling. Never. Enlightenment is having all of your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and impulses, and regardless of how painful or frightening they are, you still have the consciousness to take constructive action. That's enlightenment. So there's nothing in that recipe that says you get over your fear. You act opposite of that. You know, the fear of the Christian hell is trying to control your actions. Don't drink, don't dance, don't smoke, don't date girls who do, don't listen to rock music, don't vote Democratic, you know, whatever it is. It's that fear of you're going against God's will. You know, I mean, how the religious right has completely identified itself with the Republican Party is an amazing thing. I mean, that wasn't always the case. You know, there were people that were religious that were on both sides of the political spectrum, and politics was really more about financial things. You know, you were a fiscal conservative or you were progressive. I mean, that was what it was, and you could be religious and be on both sides of that. But now, if you're a born-again Christian, you have to be a Republican. It's just mind-boggling. I mean, the de-evolution of the human thinking that's happened is mind-boggling. People are stupider now. They're more emotionally immature now. There is far more neurosis and psychosis than I've ever seen. The inability for people to know the truth is just mind-boggling. It's beyond sad. I'm beyond being sad and angry. I'm befuddled by all of it. How do you get over the fear of the Christian hell? You don't. It'll eventually, as time goes on and you keep doing the practices, eventually you'll see it for what it is. It's a paper tiger. It's nothing. But that comes with time. It's a cult. Christianity is a cult. So is politics. So is QAnon. It's a cult. It's, you know, and part of a cult is if you think differently, you're going to hell. And so there's a big, strong urge to stay safe by adopting a certain belief. And cognitive dissonance is a great word because it means that part of you knows what you're doing is irrational, but there's another part of you that feels you have to do this to survive. You know, and I watched this when I was a Christian. You know, when little kids are Christians, they don't really understand what the religion is. And then when I went to my first college was a Christian college where, you know, you study the Bible. And these bright-eyed kids were showing up because their parents were Christian and they were born Christian. And then they're really indoctrinated. when they go to a Christian college, you are really indoctrinated into the cult. And you saw bright-eyed, happy, wide-eyed kids. By the end of those 4 years, their eyes were dead. Their eyes were dead because they had to quell the natural questions that come up that go, what do you mean people go to hell for having the wrong opinion about religion? Why does God do that? It doesn't make any sense. But in order to fit in, you got to kill that question. And people would kill the question within them. I didn't. I was more interested in the truth, and I was willing. In fact, when I left Christianity with the belief that I would go to hell. But it was more important for me to be, looking back on it, it was incredibly brave. At the time, I didn't think of it that way, but looking back on it, it was incredibly brave because I said, I need to be able to look myself in the mirror. And if I can't do that in heaven and I have to go to hell to be able to hold on to my integrity, then that's what I'm going to do. But I'm not worshiping this God anymore. Even if he is the one controlling, I won't worship him. He's evil. I can't do it. I can't consign my non-Christian friends who are more loving and accepting of me than all of my Christian friends put together. I'm not willing to live in a universe where they go to hell and that asshole goes to heaven. I'm not going to do it. And it was horrific. It was the most frightening thing I went through. And I didn't lose my fear of hell. I held on to my integrity. My integrity and my happiness and my health was more important than being accepted, even if that meant I was going to die. And again, this is what my ancestors taught, which is those who die in battle go to Valhalla. So you don't have to get rid of your fear of the Christian hell. It'll go away on its own if you live fearlessly. All right, what else? And living fearlessly is not a feeling, it's an action. People who are going, when they're going to fight, right, those who die in battle, when somebody's heading into battle, they're not free of their fear. So there's nothing in it about those who are free from fear go to Valhalla. Those who take action despite their fear go to Valhalla. What else? Matt Doob, that's not a question. And so how can I help you? And let's just look at your statement. I don't normally do this, but we'll look at it. You say, when you say that I am God and that I am creating God at my image, I can create my own world, but I am in a matrix, Truman Show, and others are only the manifestation of my created world. That's not what I said. That's partially what I said. I don't know why that's a problem for you. Yes, you are God. I didn't say you're in a Truman Show because a Truman Show is a victim. Truman was a victim. You're not a victim unless you want to play that role. Most people do because it's safer. It's safer to be a victim. It's far more frightening when you actually have control over everything. You have to take responsibility for everything, and that's a lot more frightening. So I didn't say you're in a Truman Show. Others, I didn't say are only the manifestation of your created world. I never said only. They are your projection. I am your projection. That doesn't mean that I don't exist in my own right. We're talking about quantum fields. If you want to understand this, go learn about quantum mechanics. Again, get educated. Learn about what the quantum fields are, quantum entanglement. Because we don't live in a black and white world. What your problem is you can't figure out the black and white. Either you're created or you're creating everything, but it can't be both at the same time. It's both at the same time. I am your projection and you are mine. We are creating each other, and yet I created everything and you created everything. You don't have to understand it. This is trying to control everything. You don't have to control everything. You can, be part of everything. So are we sharing the same manifestation? No, obviously not. If we were sharing the same manifestation, then your life and my life would be exactly the same, and they're obviously not. But it doesn't change the fact that you are my projection and I am yours. Do you guys remember the story of Haleakala Hugh Lin? He's around. You can find him on YouTube if you want to go listen to him talk. He's around. But this was a guy who was a psychologist. He was also a Huna shaman. And he was invited to come and work at an insane asylum in Hawaii where he lived. And he checked with himself, and he could feel that this was part of his dharma, this was part of his path. And he went, and they said, we have these patients that are incurable. They're insane and they're incredibly destructive. We have to chain them to the wall because they're so destructive, and we don't want to do that. That's inhumane. But if you don't, they'll bite your ear off or throw feces at you, or what can we do? And we've heard that you can help, so can you come and help? And he says, yes, I will come and work for you. So they gave him an office, and they said, okay, great. When can you meet with the patients? He said, oh, I'm not going to meet with them. They said, how are you going to do your job? And he says, don't worry about it. Just give me their files. And they asked again, well, I mean, it's irregular. You're supposed to go. And he says, yeah, well, this is how I do it. I'm not going to meet with them. Just give me their files. So gave him a stack of files. He went into his office, and in his office, with the door closed, not ever meeting those patients, he would open up the file. And when he opened up the file, he'd read, patient X bit off Nurse Cratchit's ear, and then he had a judgment. Oh my God, that's so horrible. Close the file shut, and then he would do his work, which was he would go to change his judgment of the person. And so he has a mantra. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And he's talking to himself. He's talking to what he calls the data in himself, what I would call your lower self, the programming in your lower self. And he's changing it so that he can honestly, not pretend, but that he can honestly see the infinity, the God within that very sick, mentally disturbed person. And when he can fix that within himself, where he really can see him that way, then he moves on. He'll open up the file and he'll look for the next thing. He wasn't there to heal the clients. He was there to heal his own projection of them, because they are his projection. And the end result was that those clients ended up recovering to such a degree that they were, as I understand it, were left, they could leave. And he says, if I can fix it within me, my outer world will get fixed. Does it mean that those people did or didn't exist? Of course, they had their own life. We would find out if we were to talk to them. They would have had their own process of what they were doing. Then the question is, did he fix them or did they fix him? Did he get pulled into that because that patient then started to look at themselves and heal themselves, and as a result of that, Dr. Haleakala Hugh Lin healed himself? It's both. The only thing that you have control over is what you do. So you have the ability to fix your projection. This is why it doesn't matter. This is why, even though the world went into lockdown, before this virus ever came onto the planet, I ended up in the safest place in the world that also simultaneously was my fantasy. It's because of that. I didn't have to know. I just have to listen to my soul, and I'll project the reality that I want. I'll literally create it. I've been here for 2 years now. I've been didn't have to deal with any of the lockdown for that reason. What else? Ed the Wave, question. I'm learning from your rune series and learning the meanings of runes with more depth. What was the most... Yeah, how did I know that? What was the most... Sorry. I'm learning from your rune series and learning the meanings of runes with more depth. What was the most effective way to learn and understand the runes more deeply? To do readings. The way that I learned the runes was... I had just gotten my divorce. I was broke, and I was living in a cabin in the woods of North Idaho, and I didn't want to go work at Walmart. So I started thinking, what are things people can do and work from home? And I saw that people could become phone psychics. And that gave me the opportunity, because I'm not a psychic, but I was learning runes. I could do rune readings. Now, they didn't know that. They would say, they'd ask what their question was, which 99% of the time is, when is my boyfriend who I'm cheating on with, when is he going to marry me? And so I would do the runes, and I would look at runes, and I would simply do my best to interpret the runes right in front of me. And the thing is that I was under the gun. Because this, when you're doing phone psychic readings, there's a timer and people are paying for each minute. So you have to be able to come to conclusions really quickly. So I had to really be able to learn how to interpret the runes as quickly as possible. And as I did that, I also learned how to then transmit not just the meanings of the runes, but apply it to the situation. So that was what I did. So I would become a rune reader. If you want to learn how to understand the runes more deeply, become a rune reader. Charge people money to do rune readings. That's why I have the rune certification program, so that people can go do that. So it's the fastest and best way to learn not only the runes, but really the runes are living. They're not just symbols. They're living entities, and they can really communicate with you. KB, honest feeling. I can't thank you enough for having both your channels. I've been so many aha moments since I realized I'm autistic, not BPD. My life at 52 years old. Okay, well, good. I'm happy to have been a part of that. So congratulations. I'm glad you're feeling, that you're progressing in life. Dakota Spruill, question, lowercase. How do you know if you are using supernatural powers for selfish reasons? Like a medicine man who abandoned his vows and became a Wendigo, as the natives say, or Sith, as George Lucas says. You know the answer to that question. I don't even know how to respond to that. If you're doing things for selfish reasons, meaning if you're doing something because you want something, or if you're doing something simply to be helpful to others. Ironically, the way that I keep myself from being selfish is I charge people money. I charge people money because once you pay me, I don't have an agenda. This is why cult leaders always end up in sexual relationships with their students. I mean, you find any cult leader, at some point you're going to find there's been sexual abuse. Because the cult leader puts themselves out there because they narcissistically need people's attention and their worship. So one of the best ways to get victims under your control is to give away things for free. I will teach you for free. Spirituality should be for free. So they lure you into this. Those people who have unresolved childhood issues, who feel unheard, unloved, they feel like victims, and who say, people should just give spiritual truth for free. What they're really saying is, mommy and daddy didn't love me. And you're right, mommy and daddy should have loved you for free. But everybody else is going to want something from you. So it's incredibly immature to expect a teacher to teach you for free. Unless they're doing it like, feeding the homeless because you want to give, free to the world. You want to burn off some of your karma. So when I charge people money, it's because if you give me money, then I don't have an agenda. I won't want anything from you. But if I don't charge you money and there isn't some kind of exchange, then it's impossible for me to not want something from you. It's impossible. I'm going to want, if you're a hot woman, I'm going to want to date you. If you're, whatever it is. I'm going to want your approval. I'm going to want your love. I'm going to want your friendship. I'm going to want something. And when a teachers have a lot of power, and when they have that power and they're doing something, even just, people who go around and teach for free because they are projecting their infantile need for acceptance, they're projecting it onto the world. I've seen them, it all comes back to the same thing. Anybody who gives away things for free always ends up angry and feeling victimized, and it just never works out. So how can you tell if you're using supernatural powers for selfish reasons? Are you doing it to get something? Do you want to feel like a good person? Is your worth based on what people think of you? If you are a spiritual person and you give away things for free, well, then you feel valuable. That's selfish. That's narcissistic. Are you doing it because you want to be the most beloved teacher on the planet? That's selfish. Are you doing it because you want their approval? You want to date them. That's selfish. You know what it is if you're being selfish or not. I understand the confusion, but again, Dakota, like I've said earlier, this is why it's good to have an actual teacher, an actual mentor who you can personally interact with, because you won't be able to figure it out on your own, most likely. If you have what I want, you got to do what I've done. I've had teachers my whole life, and they weren't perfect by any means. But you've got to have somebody there who's going to reflect back to you your true self. You got to have it, or you won't make any progress. What else? See, so the reason why I had to go, because I got a massage at 1, but now my masseuse is telling me she's going to be late. Just stopping to have some food, probably 10 to, all right, she's going to be, half hour from now. All right. So I'll say thumbs up, cool face emoji. Okay. What else? Vincent.thunderwizard.com. You can go to his website if you want to get a reading from him. He's one of my astrology certified astrologers. Ed the Wave, question: can the standing Thor posture be treated as a singular standalone practice? Yes, it is, like Zhan Zhuang. So Zhuang, or also Zhang, means standing posture. So there isn't the standing posture. There are standing postures. Post-standing Qigong is one posture. There are infinite numbers of postures. So yes, the standing Thor practice is a Zhang, and it can be done all by itself, and you can just focus on that for the rest of your life and you will get everything. There's so many things that I teach, whether it's the yin-yang hands, whether it's the Thor posture, whether it's the Ingrun meditation, whether it's the Hool breath. These are all standalone practices that if you just did that one practice for the rest of your life, you would get everything. And that is one of them. Antonio A, question: I'm struggling with traveling in the astral. Now, normally I would say, Antonio, when have I ever said I teach people how to astral travel? But in this one, I'll answer any questions, no matter how stupid. I'm getting a little chilly here, so hang on. I gotta put on my sweatshirt here. So bear in mind, I don't teach astral travel unless you're talking about shamanic journeying, which is a form of astral travel. But I don't, first off, let me just say, I don't think astral travel is accomplishing what you think it is. Because shamanism, whenever you travel shamanically, there has to be a practical, even life or death reason for it. If you're doing it just because you want to do it, you're most likely only indulging in your unconscious fantasies. Even if you feel like you're traveling outside of your body, you're most likely not. Because your most astral experience is this three-dimensional experience. This three-dimensional experience is an astral travel for the soul. It's redundant to try and then astral travel while you're astral traveling. It's redundant. Your job is to master this astral journey that you're on, the human one. You're a soul, you're an infinite being who has downloaded into a limited three-dimensional meat sack that has two eyeballs and a brain and a nervous system. That is your virtual reality suit that allows you to interact with limited three-dimensional reality. That is an astral travel. Your job is to learn how to bring spiritual power to this dimension. So when you astral travel, it's because you need to find out something that you didn't know, and or you need to get information to help somebody else who's in trouble. Anything other than that is narcissistic and at best superficial, and at worst it's actually keeping you away from your spiritual evolution. You think it's spiritual, but to even want to be an astral traveler means that you're operating from some assumptions that are coming from limitation. To want to astral travel means that you don't like being in your three-dimensional self, which means that you're not overcoming the challenges that are being given to you. You're escaping. Having said that, I shamanic journey all the time. So let's go on with your question. It's just, whenever I see the word astral travel, it tells me a couple of things. It tells me you're not really watching my channel. It tells me you're probably not doing the exercises, and so it makes me go, why are you on my channel? I've never taught astral travel. I don't do it for those reasons. And then you say, okay, in the astral, when I go out of the body, that's an assumption. You might not be going out of your body. You might be going into your unconscious, which is another universe in and of itself. But you say, when I go out of the body, I start seeing disturbing faces that causes me back to the physical body. Any tip to keep the mind focused on? No, because the disturbing faces are your unconscious. Those are your unresolved unconscious feelings. So now you have a life and death reason to what you're calling astral travel. Which is to go and find out who those faces are, because they're feelings within you. Now, I said people who astral travel are escaping. You're escaping. You're trying to escape those disturbing things within you. So I would look at it differently, and instead of trying to run away from those disturbing faces, you have the power to stop the face and say, who are you? Why am I seeing you? So that's what I would do in your case. Dakota Spruill, are you supernaturally good at surfing now? I don't know what that means. What is supernatural surfing? Why would I want to do that? The whole point of surfing is to be connected to this physical force. The wave and the ocean. I want to be connected to that. I don't understand what a supernatural surf, I don't even know what that means. For me, surfing it feels supernatural to me in and of itself. So I don't know why I would do that. I don't understand the question. At the Wave, honest feeling, the waterfall exercise, which is the Qigong where we do this. The waterfall exercise in the evening 90-day set helps me relieve tension, headaches for me, especially after a long, stressful day. Yep, that is one of the most healing practices. And if you want to learn that, you can go to thunderwizard.com and you can sign up for the Warrior 90-day Lightning Qigong, and you will understand what Ed the Wave is talking about. Creative Virgo 12 question. Re. So, you know, when people put RE, I get annoyed by things. This is one of those things that annoys me. Sorry, Creative Virgo, but it annoys me. So I was alive when email was invented. So an email, you would send an email to somebody. And then when they responded, that would automatically have re, which means regarding. And it means in response to what you said. And now we have people who start emails with re, and they don't even know what it means. So it annoys me when your first question is re. I know what you're saying. You're saying regarding elements used to quell arguments, like you do not recommend metal response to metal. These would work except on narcissist BPD. Does any element work on What does mean them? Does any element work on them? Seeing others sad makes their day. Creative Virgo, get the fuck out of your narcissistic relationship. I'm not going to co-sign this for you. You want me to give you elements so that you can get back at some narcissist you live with? Get the fuck out. Move out. Get your own place. The way to deal with narcissists is to not have them in your life. You are seriously codependent. Are you in therapy? You need to be in therapy, and you need to be working the 12 steps. I recommend CODA, CODA.org. Your question has no function. You're asking me, you're saying, I want to indulge in this really codependent interaction with a narcissist, but I want to win this time. So can I do, and you're trying to use these spiritual practices that I'm teaching you in order to indulge in this. Get the fuck out. Okay? Get therapy. Are you in therapy? Are you working the 12 steps? And are you living on your own? Until you do those three things, those are the three things you need to do first. If you're not doing those things, everything else that you're asking me is meaningless. Right? It's meaningless. Everything that you're asking me to help you do, if you aren't doing that, is like sitting in a pile of your own feces and asking, is there any kind of incense that will make the poop smell go away? No, you have to get up out of the poop and wash yourself off. That's what will make the smell go away. You need to get the hell out of this relationship, get into your own place, and be in therapy, doing all of that. If the things that I'm teaching empower you to do that, so much the better. But don't take what I'm teaching to help you stay in that shit. I'm not gonna co-sign that for you. Okay? I hope you understand everything I just said was out of a desire to help you. Film sample CG question. When should I do the Celestial Neigong if I'm doing phase 1 of 90-day challenge? Well, you can take bits and pieces. You can see already that the Celestial Qigong is in the 90-day challenge. There's pieces of it in there. So you can, if you've been doing the Celestial Qigong for a while, you've gotten a lot of the basics, you can then pick and choose what you want from the Celestial Qigong, and you can put it in the 90-day. Or if you want to do it on its own, I would do it beforehand and then do the 90-day practice. You can stop doing the Celestial Qigong and just focus on the 90-day practice if you want. But at some, now if you've done the Celestial Neigong for a while, now you're at a level of mastery. And now the Celestial Neigong, the Qigong, is a bunch of practices that you can use as for your repertoire to create your own practice eventually, in whatever way you want. What else? Jameson Son question. Is it okay to use the waterfall technique as a therapeutic tool when struggling with cravings for nicotine? Yes. I'm worried that I can only use certain practices in full ritual context. No, that's your perfectionism. Listen to what I just said earlier to the earlier question. Any of the reason, if I was teaching you in person, I might teach you a practice that you had to do in a certain order, otherwise you'd harm yourself. Because I'm teaching things on video, I have to take responsibility that people are going to do it wrong or do it out of sequence. In fact, I know people will do that. They'll consciously do that because that's just what people do. So I've made sure that everything that I teach on video is something that can be done piecemeal or out of order, and it won't hurt you. It will only help you. So feel free to play around with it as much as you want. You want to get the most out of it? Then do it exactly as I lay it out. But I already know people aren't going to do that. I appreciate your question, but no, you can do whatever you want with it. If you want me to tailor it for you, like I do in the videos, great. If not, feel free to experiment with it in whatever way you want. Jameson Son question. Where'd we go? Okay, I am running out of time here, so I might have to pick and choose what I want to answer. Is it possible that therapeutic things, in my case ecstatic dance, could drift into just being unhealthy distraction? Yeah, Jameson, again, I'm just going to repeat what I always say to you. Just stop being such a perfectionist. Just stop criticizing and analyzing every single thing that you do. You were programmed to do that. You were programmed by your mother and your father, because I know you. You were programmed to not to judge yourself literally for every single fucking thing. Everything you think, feel, and do, you've been programmed to judge yourself. Just stop being so hard on yourself. I mean, it's going to take a while for you to learn how to do that, but just do what makes you happy. Therapeutic, ecstatic dance doesn't get you drunk. It doesn't put nicotine in your body. You know what I mean? It doesn't. It's good for you. Just do whatever the hell you want. Especially you, ecstatic dance especially, because you need to be a little kid. When I teach African drumming, in order to get the song to be right, everybody has to do their part perfectly. So I can always tell when somebody comes in the class who, as a kid, was, either abused or neglected, because they're going to I want to just play whatever I want. And I have to say, I'm sorry, that's not what this class is for. This isn't a drum circle. And I end up losing them. But I can tell what they need is they need to just, spontaneously express themselves, because little babies and little kids need to do that. You need to do that. Ecstatic dance is necessary for your healing. You have to go back and give yourself that childhood you never had. So stop judging yourself so harshly, my friend. You say, I trust myself. I'm scared that if I do things without your approval, not in this tradition, you will tell me to stop, and then I'll either have to accept that or fight you. Yeah, this is what happens when somebody becomes my student, I tell them, you're not allowed to leave. If you become my apprentice, you're not allowed to leave unilaterally. You have to talk to me about it in session. Because the first thing that happens is people will project onto me, and they'll see me as a savior or a teacher or a lover or something like that, and they'll think I'm infallible. That's good, because that means they'll be willing to follow my directions. Then what will happen is, if they follow in my teaching, their unconscious feelings will come to the surface, and in their unconscious feelings is going to be rage towards their parent. They're going to transfer that, project it onto me, and they're going to want to leave. And so if when they want to leave, they're going to be thinking that I'm doing something wrong, that I'm being mean to them, that I'm, abusing them in some way. And so if they want to stay, have the ability to stay. Because the first thing people say was, I'm going to take some time off. And I say, you can't do that. You have to talk to me about it. We have to find out why you need to take time off. Now, nobody likes hearing that, but that will help us find out if there's any unconscious resistance towards your growth, which means at some point the student has to see me as a fallible human being, and they have to have their hatred for me. They have to have their anger, their hatred, and their childhood rebellion. And instead, what I do, which is different from parents, is I don't judge them. I won't judge you out of your feelings, but you have to have them, and you have to stay with me and have them. Then, when you and I are able to redirect that anger towards where it belongs, which is towards your parents and not me, then you will see me as a human. You'll see that I am fallible, that I'm not perfect, and I don't know everything. And then I'll be able to teach you, because then you'll stay with me not because you're looking up at me and projecting all of these feelings onto me. You'll be staying with me because you have a selfish desire to get the knowledge that I have. And when you've gotten all of the knowledge you can from me, then leave. Then I can teach you. My job is to teach you so that you can become your own guru, your own teacher. But until then, you've got to go through the childhood projection, transference, and everybody does it. Doesn't matter who you are. That's how you know you found a good teacher. A good teacher won't judge you for your feelings, especially when you hate them. A good teacher will go, tell me how much you hate me. I want to listen to it. Wow, that's interesting. So what did your parents do to you to make you feel like that? You're absolutely right for having those feelings. I'm not doing that, but you're right. That's what a real teacher does, because the teacher is now taking the parental level to the next level, because that's what parents are supposed to do. But they don't often do that. They will say, I'll give you something to cry about. You better wipe that frown off your face. My job is to let you have all your feelings and then progress beyond them. And that's why you pay me. You pay me so that I won't get my feelings hurt when you get upset. Now, if you attack me, if you come at me and attack me, I'm going to get offended and I'm going to block you. But if you say, I'm really angry at you right now because you said this and it makes me feel like this, I'm gonna actually reward you for having your feelings. Ideally. What else? Dakota Spruill question, do you use the fixed stars or the outer planets when doing a chart? I use I'm a Vedic astrologer, so I use the 7 visible planets, which include the north and south node of the moon. I don't use the other ones because Vedic astrology doesn't, and the reason for that is because those are generational. Like Pluto and Uranus, those are generational, so they don't really have they talk about a whole generation because they're so slow moving. Vincent.thunderwizard.com question, I'm struggling to understand my Aruda, moon in Aquarius in the 5th house. Is there any advice you can have to help me understand it? Moon in Aquarius in the 5th house is your Aruda. People see you as an empath. People see you as an empath. People see you as a studier, a meditator on the esoteric. Those are just a few things. To go deeper than that, I'd have to put a lot more time into it. So think about that. Meditate on those. They see you as a meditator because moon is meditation. They see you very emotional. They see you very, very sensitive, which I'm sure you are. Mother Kali, question. If I'm a priestess, what would be the costume other than, I don't know. I'd have to look at your chart to know that. Follow your instinct. Follow your instinct. Jameson Son, question, feeling, having incredible Orlog revelations coming back into ecstatic dance, and I'm scared that if you say it's bad, I'll have to choose between you and my soul. That's very common. There are people that are with me that, everybody's got something to work on, and there are people who oftentimes are in really destructive relationships. And I work with them to help them find their soul desire. And when they start getting into their soul desire, it fucks up their relationship. Their abusive, codependent, partner will start getting upset. For a real reason, because you're now no longer feeding into their narcissism or their codependence. And so you do have to make a choice, because either your partner is going to rise up with you, or they're going to either try and push you down, or they're going to leave you, or they're going to force you to leave. So it's very true that at some point you may have to choose between me and something else. The question is whether or not it's helpful for you or destructive for you, or that if I know what I'm talking about. But usually I stay out of that. But sometimes, I'll say, why are you with this person? I don't understand what you're getting from being in this relationship with that person. And then they have to choose in their mind. Now, I'm not going to choose them. I'm not going to tell them what to do. They can come to me every week for the next 10 years and I'll keep asking them that same question. I don't know why you're with that person. What are you getting out of that? But they'll feel like they have to choose, and so they'll leave. So that feeling is an accurate one. But now I'm not going to do that. I'm telling you the opposite. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. Where are we? Question: do you have any tips for becoming a successful spiritual teacher on YouTube? Yeah, I've made videos about it. You have to find out if that's where you belong. But in order to be a successful spiritual teacher on YouTube, first off, you have to have a channel. You have to post as often as you can, and don't try and do it perfect, and don't judge it for a year. After a year, then look at your channel and see if it's worth your time and effort. But like anything else, if that's what you've decided that you want to do that, and your chart will tell you, you're an astrologer, so you should be able to figure out, in my chart, it's really clear. My Aruda is Mars in the third house. The third house is, among other things, it is reality television, which is what? Constantly, it's the news. You're just constantly being flooded with the same information over and over again. My job is to come onto YouTube as often as I can and keep saying the same shit every day. That's where I'm going to make my money. That's my Aruda. If my Aruda was the fifth house, that would mean I write War and Peace, which is just one book, and that one book defines my whole life. No, that's like true art. I'm reality television. That's my Aruda. So you have to find out in your chart whether or not that's in there. But if you want to be successful at YouTube, you just keep doing it. You don't stop. You just keep doing it and don't give up. And eventually you'll get a following if you're meant to. Zach Johnson's being cute. That's not a question. He is the father of my grandchildren. I cannot get rid. Well, I don't know that you can't get rid, but he's the father of your grandchildren. So he's not he's not, anyway, listen, creative Virgo, what you just said to me was bullshit. You don't have to be there. You really need to go to Coda. You really need to go to Al-Anon. You are so codependent. I have no tolerance for you wanting to tell me why you're not going to get help. I'm not going to co-sign that. Doesn't matter that they're a family member. You don't need to be there. It's not your problem. So stop asking me about it. Go get some help. What else? Holly Galagli question, asking anything. Is being an empath a real thing? Or is hiding behind undeath with emotions or behavior patterns? Being an empath, the majority of people who call themselves empaths are not empaths. Majority of people who call themselves empaths are people who have a strong experience of having a lot of feelings. but they don't realize it's all their projected unresolved feelings. Because you'll find that people who call themselves empaths also take a lot of pride in how furious they become against narcissists, how they destroy the narcissist. So they show really psychopathic, destructive, violent, emotional judgment, and they have no empathy for people that they call narcissists, and they simultaneously call themselves empaths. So most people who call themselves empaths are not. Are there real empaths? Yes. And could these empaths potentially be real empaths? Yes, if they get help. All right, unfortunately I got to cut it short because now my masseuse is here, so I got to go. I'm sorry I didn't get to everybody's question. I'll try and come back and maybe answer these questions another time. Anyway, see you guys later. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you when I talk to you.